Throughout the years, SpongeBob has made a few TV movie episodes. 2 years ago, we got Creepaway Camp for the 25th anniversary special, which I personally think is a pretty good episode. SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout in Season 12 as their 20th anniversary, which a lot of people seem to think is the best one yet. And then there's Atlantis SquarePantis back in Season 4. While not a numbered anniversary title, this was the first major TV movie episode that Nickelodeon made to kick the concept out of the gate. But this one is a mixed bag, to say the very least. Every time I read a comment section or a forum talking about this episode, it's either people hated it and called it SpongeBob's worst anniversary episode, or people absolutely loved it and say this episode is overhated. But what is with this episode that could divide people into two majorly opposing sides like this? Well, to oversimplify the answer, it's because this episode feels like it never happened. So, Truth or Square is a 1 hour long episode in Season 6 of the show. It was released in November 2009, marking SpongeBob's 10th anniversary since it first aired on television. However, as cool as the title card is, it didn't really help us to understand the episode any better. In fact, to this day, I'm still wondering why they called it Truth or Square. Speaking of the plot, it's basically divided into two different sections that unfortunately love to overlap each other every few minutes. The animation of SpongeBob itself and the IRL journey of Patchy the pirate at Nickelodeon HQ. For the Patchy section, it's stacked to the brim with cultural references. Right from the get-go, we get a voiceover narration from Ricky Gervais.
10 years ago, an unknown pirate from Encino began a decade-long obsession with an absorbent sponge.
He's basically telling Patchy's journey in the show over the last 10 years, and today, as a longtime SpongeBob fan, he'll be visiting the Nickelodeon studio to ask SpongeBob himself to be a guest star on his own show. Then he goes to the security guy, tells him why he's there, and gets told to wait in the waiting room for the cast. In the meantime, we finally get to see our title card and the animation section. Gary wakes up in the morning by lots of alarm clocks lined up to the foghorn clock, only to blow out more clocks, thus waking up SpongeBob. After turning them all off, he greets Gary and says he has to use all these clocks, or he might otherwise miss the 117th anniversary of the Krusty Krab. Yes, 117th anniversary. It's a weird number for sure, but we'll talk more about it later. SpongeBob also says he remembers the first time he ever visited the restaurant, and despite the fact that he's still inside his mummy's tummy, he fell in love with the dish. After that, SpongeBob does his morning routine montage as usual, then rushes all the way to the Krusty Krab where he bumps into the customers waiting in line to get into the restaurant. So he jumps over the crowd's heads. Inside the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs activates all the metal shields just so they could have a secret briefing before the event. Krabs said they had to be extra careful today because Plankton is for sure gonna take all the chaos from the event and use it as an opportunity to try to steal the recipe again. That's also why he hired Patrick for extra muscle.
Who are you? And who are you working for?
Meanwhile, at the Chum Bucket, Plankton is in the middle of celebrating 50 years of failure. He said he already tried to steal the recipe 1,003 times exactly, and 1,003 times he gets launched back to the Chum Bucket in failure. There's even a whole montage of SpongeBob and Krabs launching Plankton via all kinds of equipment. Some of it actually references previous episodes, like skiing apart from Krabs a la mode. But of course, Karen always manages to sweet talk him back into trying, no matter how crushed he is. All she needs to do is just say some encouraging words.
Now who's my big man?
Now, Karen.
Come get out there and steal that recipe.
Yes, ma'am.
Meanwhile, in Nick's HQ, Patchy found a Rolodex in the room. For those of you who are not familiar, it's basically a big rolling card holder to store people's contacts or even business cards. So Patchy sees one of them, stacked with celebrity numbers. Then he gets Devil and Angel Potty, the parrot, popping into his head, basically tempting him to call the celebrity for the extravaganza event. Patchy, being the opportunist pirate that he is, of course, wouldn't miss it. So he started calling some big celebrity names: Rosario Dawson, Tina Fey, who he thought was Tina Turner, Will Ferrell, and even King James himself.
Hey, LeBron, how's the dribbling?
Hey, Patchy, what's up?
Guest on the Fan Club McGoracle special for SpongeBob.
I gotta go.
Patchy was just basically asking every single one of them to become a guest star for his SpongeBob show. These scenes would keep going for at least 6 minutes before we get back to Krusty Krab again, where the crew is on the final stage of preparations. SpongeBob has just finished decorating everything with pink toilet paper, sauce, and inflated patties. Mr. Krabs cranks up the menu price to a sports event level, and Patrick makes sure everything is safe again.
Security?
And for the final touch of the decorations, SpongeBob already prepared a giant statue of a Krabby Patty made purely out of ice. But since it was so big and located deep in the walk-in freezer, he needed everyone's help to push it out. Needless to say, things can only go wrong from here.
Guys, I'm okay. No need to scream.
So now they're stuck in the freezer, and Krabs said the only reasonable way to get out of there is through the air duct. From here on, we get to see their journey in the whole air duct system, which is basically the rest of the episode. Most of it was just slapstick jokes over and over again. There really isn't much plot progression. What's interesting, however, is how the nostalgia theme plays out in their journey, because Krabs found a patty wrapper, which he claimed to be from the good old days.
Patty Rapper.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
K-R-A-B-B-Y-P-A-T-T-Y.
I don't know about you, but I'm not sure Krabby Patty existed as early as the 1950s. But I could be wrong. Anyway, now every time they stumble upon something, or even when they're simply having a brainstorming session on how to get out of there, they always say something like, "Remember that one time where I blah blah blah," or something else. They would say something as simple as, "Remember the last time you let SpongeBob redesign the interior?" Which he completely turned the whole restaurant into various styles? To something as crazy as, "Remember that one time where I married Sandy?" Which turns out to be just a stage play about SpongeBob's wedding, for better or worse. Not long after that, they would stumble onto a secret surveillance room, where Krabs set up a bunch of secret cameras all over the city and stalked everyone doing everything 24/7. You might be familiar with the scene. It has fueled some of the craziest theories on the internet, including some of mine. Now, back in the real world, Patchy is still doing the same thing more or less. He's calling Craig Ferguson, you know, the Scottish late-night host. Patchy asked him, since they're longtime friends, but Ferguson said he's busy handling his own show. In fact, he's got a big guest coming up, Mr. Robin Williams. Rest in peace. So, out of spite, Patchy said, "Screw you, Ferguson, I'm gonna kidnap Mr. Williams for my own show."
And there's this pirate.
Mr. Williams, is everything all right in there?
Yes,
Okay, go that way.
That way, go that way. Go that way.
That way.
Yeah, it's a whole skit of kidnapping for a kids show. It's actually kinda cringeworthy to watch it now. I mean, it's not bad or anything, it's just that all this happened in 2009, and now that I'm an adult, in my late 20s, it just feels cringier than I remember. Anyway, Patchy did start his own extravaganza show, but SpongeBob didn't show up at all. So he just got mad and decided to take off with his boat and see SpongeBob in person. He actually manages to reach Bikini Atoll quickly before getting eaten alive by a whale. On the bottom of the sea, Plankton is finally making his move to infiltrate the Krusty Krab via the air duct system. It goes without saying that he will end up meeting with SpongeBob and the team to have another nostalgia session.
Let me obvious before anyone sees us.
Mr. Krabs would actually break the 4th and 5th wall here in the flashback, managed to stop Plankton from hearing the recipe, and launch Plankton once again. Around this time, Squidward would also recall how good life was on Conch Street before SpongeBob moved in. It's all sunshine and rainbows every day, even at the workplace. We also learn that SpongeBob's pineapple home is a real pineapple dropped from a boat from the surface, and it lands beside Squidward's home. And SpongeBob, for whatever reason, pays the real estate agents a sack of money for the house. That's the whole story. But before we get to the final stage of their air duct journey, we get to see Patchy one more time. Now he's trapped inside the whale's mouth, crying about the failed extravaganza show. He said it's supposed to be the moment where he and SpongeBob watch all the compilation videos together. In one of the videos, there's Patchy saying, "Did you know SpongeBob was not the first character picked to be the main character? He was picked because he's the most fitting for the opening song."
Who lives in a monument under the sea?
He's basically playing variations of the opening, but with Squidward, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs instead of SpongeBob. Which would be fun, actually. I would love to see Bikini Bottom played out from Squidward's point of view. Patchy also gives us another alternative opening. This one I actually think is the most adorable of them all.
I'm ready to go to work.
It's an early Walt Disney type of animation. From the early 1930s, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the old school Mickey Mouse had its own charm. I would pay to watch a SpongeBob in that style. But before Patchy could even finish watching the tape, the projectors got burned, thus making the whale shoot Patchy back to the studio in California. Then he would be greeted by his guest star and pass out for good. Back to the air duct, the boys finally had enough. They have been trapped longer than they should and should break out using their heads now. Yes, using their heads to break out. Just like that, they made it out of there. They should have done it from the freezer in the beginning, honestly. Now, they are just too late. All the customers are already gone, tired of waiting. Mr. Krabs is crying because the big day is ruined, but it's okay. SpongeBob will save the day with some singing, just like all the specials.
SpongeBob's dopey little song is bringing him back.
The celebration is saved, everyone is alive and well, and they live happily ever after. Oh, by the way, they catch Plankton about to run with the recipe before the ending, but Krabs just catches him again. I actually kind of forgot Plankton was still in the plot. Another BTW is that we get one more Ricky Gervais narration for the outro of the episode. So yeah, that's basically it. No more BTWs, I promise. Anyway, the whole plot is kind of going back and forth, right? But you see, even after I try to help compress the whole story, it still feels like it's overshadowing itself. Because if you watched it yourself, then you would know each section only runs for about 5 minutes before going back to another one. The pace just felt like a pinball game, especially if you're watching it with ads on television. It's pretty easy to forget what we're watching halfway through, but I still have to give credit where it's due. For this video, I'm watching a full 59-minute extended version, which is longer than the original 51-minute runtime. They've added the Ricky Gervais intro and outro here, and a few more interactions with celebrities. However, if you're watching the streaming version nowadays, you're most likely to watch a shortened 41-minute episode, where they focus only on the animation plot and trim down some of the patchy sections, which, interestingly, became the source of this whole mixed bag response. As I said before, people's opinions are divided, and mainly for that reason only. Some people actually hated watching the patchy parts, which unfortunately covers about 60% of the episode. They just wanted to see SpongeBob and the gang celebrating the 10th anniversary, and even when they get to see the animation part, it's really shallow. This whole plot about SpongeBob getting ready, preparing for the event, getting stuck in the air duct, and making their way out could genuinely be compressed into a normal 11-minute episode, which is crazy to say the least. That's why some people pointed out that the whole plot dragged out without feeling earned. They just kept circling the whole time while throwing in some alternate memories of SpongeBob. Funny enough, this is also why I brought up the episode title before, Truth or Square. It doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. In fact, the alternate options for this episode title were Anniversary Special, The Great Escape, or my favorite one, stuck in the freezer. It perfectly sums up the episode, but at least they kept that alternate title for other regions. Like for the Spanish and Portuguese dubs, the title is still Stuck in the Freezer. Even in French, the title is just changed to SpongeBob SquarePants Totally Frosty Secrets. But that's just French things. As for the ones that loved this episode, they genuinely love or enjoy the Patchy part. And I could confidently say most of them are the ones living in the US. Or at least are knowledgeable about the US cultural references, to some extent. There's just so many celebrities you wouldn't be familiar with if your kid's living in other parts of the world. There's Will Ferrell and Tina Fey, who are famous comedy actors and actresses here, from things like Saturday Night Live and big comedy movies. Craig Ferguson is also a famous late-night host, but even I didn't watch the late-night show that much. Even Triumph, the insult comic dog, is a hard-to-understand reference. He was relevant around 2009 because of the 2008 election, but like, what kid is going to get that? I think Kobe Bryant is the only familiar face with kids around the globe, with the NBA and all. So yeah, I could genuinely understand anyone outside the US not liking the Patchy part. They're not bringing universal references or jokes like the caveman one.
When worlds collide.
Pretty sweet, eh?
On the other hand, some of you that like this episode like to point out that this episode is overhated, and even if it's not that good, it's still better compared to other specials like Atlantis SquarePantas, which is considered to be one of the worst specials, apparently. I kind of disagree with that, actually. I love Atlantis SquarePantas. I'll take that over Truth or Square, but you know what? You do you. However, the biggest thing that makes many people, including myself, not really enjoy this episode is, again, because this episode feels like it never happened. It's a running theme here to bring out the whole, hey, remember that one time where blah, 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 blah. However, what they did bring out every time they had a flashback is something new to us. Instead of just making a quick flashback of whatever happened in the last 10 years of the show, they decided to add some lore explanation here and there. Like how SpongeBob gets his first house and lives on Conch Street. Or how Mr. Krabs brings SpongeBob to walk in circles around the world to make sure they're not being followed before revealing the secret recipe. But then, some of them are outright too ridiculous to be taken seriously.
I'm a doctor, as far as you know.
To join these two hearts in the bonds of love.
And when you put all of them together with a bunch of alternate versions of SpongeBob, like the other cast's opening songs and the old school Disney reference, you get a sense that this episode might just be a montage collection of SpongeBob what-ifs. Does that make sense? Yeah, like from a creative standpoint, there are lots of fun, wild, and interesting ideas to be made, but way too risky to be put on a regular show. How'd SpongeBob get to Conch Street in the first place? Let's explain it quickly. What do you think SpongeBob will look like if it was made by old-school Walt Disney? Let's make that. You said SpongeBob and Sandy are a perfect couple? Let's make a joke about that. They're just answering some of the biggest fan questions about SpongeBob, but without much lore. There are barely any nostalgic feelings here. I used to really overthink about why is this episode titled Truth or Square in the first place. So I did some searching and found that apparently it's a twist on Truth or Dare. So is it like the jokes here are about either we speak the truth about SpongeBob or we just make it SpongeBob, who loves being all over the place with its lore and doesn't really have that continuity? Is that it? I don't know, man. At the end of the day, this episode is just like an unrelated spin-off to me. Something like Camp Coral. Though I feel bad making that comparison because Truth or Square is not a bad episode at all. It just feels like it never really happened. Looking back, it's still a weird chapter in SpongeBob's history. Truth or Square gives us so many weird references and alternate SpongeBob lore, I couldn't help but to think, is it even real? If anything, all the crazy stuff in this episode became a good source for some of the craziest conspiracy theories. I know I love to quote this episode. This episode might also be the mark of the modern changes for SpongeBob. The Dark Ages just started in Season 7, right after this one. We all know how it is in modern seasons. However, that doesn't mean recent seasons don't have anything good in them. In fact, I just found an episode so good, I think it might have surpassed the classic episodes. Yeah, the golden season itself. So if you want to know the full story and what made me think it's a great episode, look no further than my previous video, the episode that surpassed the classics. It's truly a shining beacon in the darkest of times. I'll see you on the next dive.